You think experience shields you. You believe that 2 decades of loyalty, long nights, canceled vacations, and late hours at a glowing screen means security. You think people will respect you for the years you've given, the mistakes you've already made so they don't have to, the wisdom you carry like armor. But let me tell you the truth. None of that matters when someone young, hungry, and shameless walks into the room. One ambitious rookie can look at everything you've built, everything you've sacrificed, and decide it's theirs for the taking. That's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't prepared for it, not at first. I thought I was safe. I thought the people I worked with, the leaders who praised my reliability, the colleagues who came to me for guidance would stand by me. But loyalty fades when charm enters the room. And charm is the deadliest weapon in an office. He was half my age with half my knowledge, but somehow he convinced the people above me that I was the obstacle. Not him. Me. I never imagined that I'd be fighting for my career against someone whose only skill was knowing how to speak fast and look confident. But here I was, watching my place crumble while executives clapped for his empty words. And the craziest part? For a while it worked. I became invisible in the very office I helped build. Meetings went on without me. My name wasn't in the room where decisions were made. I was shoved aside like a relic. But here's the thing about relics: we've survived. We've seen storms come and go. We've fought battles no one else even remembers. So when he underestimated me, when he thought I was just going to roll over and fade into the background, he made the biggest mistake of his career. Because experience may be quiet, but it never forgets. And when the time came, I was ready to show him and everyone else that flash may sparkle, but only substance stands the test of time. My name is Addison, 48 years old, divorced, 1 daughter in college, and a career that I thought was bulletproof. I've been in corporate communications for more than 20 years. That means I've survived every kind of office politics you can imagine. The bosses who couldn't remember your name, the budget cuts that nearly wiped out entire departments, the late-night emergencies where everyone panicked, and somehow I was always the one who pulled it all together. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't the type to post motivational quotes on LinkedIn or to brag at company happy hours. But I had one thing no one could fake: experience. Clients trusted me. Colleagues came to me. Even my bosses, when things went sideways, leaned on me to fix what others broke. And that mattered to me. Because work wasn't just about a paycheck. It was about pride. It was about showing my daughter that women could hold their own, even in a room full of men who thought they knew better. My mornings were always the same. Coffee, too much cream, the drive to the office listening to NPR or sometimes a true crime podcast, walking into the building with my badge, greeting the receptionist. "Morning, Susan. How are the kids?" Small things that made the office feel like a second home. The office itself? A modern open-plan maze. Cubicles lined up like dominoes, glass-walled conference rooms that made every meeting feel like a performance. And of course, the ever-broken coffee machine that somehow brewed something resembling mud. I liked routine. I liked being steady. My desk had family photos, sticky notes everywhere, and a small cactus my daughter gave me years ago. It was messy, but it was mine. And then came the disruption. His name was Ethan, 26 years old, hired as an innovation strategist, which, by the way, is corporate jargon for we don't know what this role does, but it sounds cool. I remember the first time I saw him. He walked in with a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, hair perfectly styled, a smile so bright it could have been in a toothpaste commercial. He extended his hand and said, "You must be Addison. I've heard a lot about you." I shook his hand, polite, professional. But something about the way he said it, like I was a story from the past, a chapter in a book he'd already read, didn't sit right with me. First, I brushed it off. I've seen plenty of young hires come and go. Full of energy, full of ideas, but usually humbled quickly when reality hit. So I thought, fine, let the kid have his moment. But Ethan, he wasn't like the others. He didn't just want to fit in. He wanted to take over. In those first weeks, I tried to mentor him. I really did. I invited him to sit in on client calls, explained why we handled certain accounts the way we did, showed him the shortcuts that made life easier. But he wasn't listening. Not really. Instead, he looked at me with that kind of smirk, the kind that said, "You're nice, but you're outdated." He'd throw around words like disruption, digital natives, innovation pipelines, Half the time they didn't even mean anything. But the executives loved it. They ate it up like candy. And me? I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Invisible. That was the beginning. A slow shift. The glances. The whispers. The way meetings seemed to move past me. I didn't realize it then, but a storm was coming. One that would test everything I thought I knew about loyalty, respect, and the weight of experience. At first it was subtle. Ethan didn't come charging in, waving a flag of takeover. No, he was smarter than that. He chipped away slowly, comments here, interruptions there. I remember one of the first meetings where I noticed it. The conference room was filled with chatter, coffee cups on the table, everyone half distracted. I began presenting our quarterly campaign strategy, something I had worked on for weeks. My slides were clean, my data tight. But halfway through, Ethan leaned forward in his chair, cut me off and said, "Actually, Addison, I think what we should focus on is not these traditional channels. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Reels, that's where the real audience is. The old ways don't capture attention anymore." I smiled. I tried to be professional. I said, "Those platforms are valuable, Ethan. But without a solid foundation of strategy and proven channels, flashy campaigns collapse quickly. Clients want consistency, not just trends." He leaned back, smirked, and the room went quiet. One of the executives cleared his throat and said, "Let's hear more from Ethan." And just like that, my words evaporated. That was the first sting. And it didn't stop there. In brainstorming sessions, he started talking over me. When I shared an idea, he'd spin it, rephrase it, and suddenly it was his. And people applauded. I overheard the younger staff once in the break room whispering, "Ethan just gets it. Addison's good, but she's old school." Old school. The word stuck like a thorn. One afternoon, I walked past the glass-walled conference room and froze. Ethan was inside, pitching directly to the executives without me. I was supposed to be the lead on that project. But there he was, animated, confident, dazzling them with colorful slides and jargon. I stood there watching through the glass like an outsider. No one even looked up. Not one person thought to invite me in. Later, my supervisor called me into her office. The blinds were half drawn, her desk stacked with reports. She folded her hands and gave me a smile that felt rehearsed. "Addison," she said, "Ethan's been showing a lot of initiative. Maybe you could take a step back on this one. Let him lead. It could be good for team morale, fresh energy." Fresh energy. That's what they called it. My years of loyalty, dedication, results, reduced to stale air compared to his sparkle. I went home that night furious. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my daughter's picture on the fridge, wondering if she'd face this same battle one day. Would she work her whole life just to be pushed aside by someone who knew how to say the right words? But anger can be fuel. So I decided to watch, to listen, to bide my time. Because if experience had taught me one thing, it's this: arrogance always leaves cracks. And when those cracks appeared, I would be ready. The cracks came sooner than I expected. Ethan's flashy campaign was approved. The executives were thrilled. He strutted around the office, high-fiving interns, dropping lines like, "This is going to put us on the map." But I saw the holes. His numbers didn't add up. His assumptions about the audience were shallow. His budget projections? A disaster waiting to happen. I tried to warn him. One evening, I approached him by the coffee machine. I said, "Ethan, I've run numbers like this before. You're overestimating reach and underestimating cost. If you launch like this, it won't hold. Addison, I appreciate the concern. But this isn't the 90s anymore. People don't read reports. They follow trends. Trust me. I've got this." He smirked, sipped his coffee, and walked away. Trust me. Those words echoed in my head. Because trust is earned. And he hadn't earned mine. I started gathering everything: emails, client feedback, case studies from the last 5 years. I documented every flaw I found in his strategy, quietly, carefully. While he was busy performing for the spotlight, I was building a case strong enough to survive any storm. Because when the moment came, when his house of cards started to wobble, I'd be ready to bring the truth crashing down. Friday. The big presentation. The day that would decide everything. The boardroom was bright, too bright. Those sterile fluorescent lights that made every wrinkle sharper. every bead of sweat more visible. Executives sat around the long polished table. Starbucks cups lined up like little soldiers, laptops open, phones buzzing silently. I sat near the end, calm on the outside but storming inside. Ethan, of course, sat at the head, laptop connected. His confidence filling the room like cologne you couldn't escape. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the beginning of a new era for this company. We're going to break boundaries, capture Gen Z, and make our brand not just relevant, but iconic. He dazzled them. His slides were like fireworks, bright, loud, impossible to ignore. He tossed out phrases like virality metrics and micro-influencer ecosystems. The room leaned in. Heads nodded. Pens scribbled notes. For a moment it felt like he had them all. But here's the thing about fireworks. They burn out fast. So with just a modest budget increase, we'll achieve triple the engagement, 5 times the impressions, and exponential ROI. This is how modern marketing works. That was my cue. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. I leaned forward, cleared my throat, and said, if I may add some context to Ethan's projections. I stood. My hands didn't shake. 20 years of experience held them steady. Slide by slide I began. Not flashy, not loud, just truth. Ethan's model assumes a 300% growth rate in 3 months. That's statistically impossible in this sector. Here are the real numbers based on our last 10 campaigns. Average growth? 27%. Sustained, reliable. Not fantasy. Next, budget. Ethan's plan underestimates ad spend by at least 40%. Here's the breakdown of platform costs, inflation rates, and projected competition. His projections collapse when tested against market data. And finally, the strategy. Ethan's proposal is flashy, yes, but it's not sustainable. The campaigns he cites as success stories, they failed within 6 months. I've reached out to clients and here are the results. Addison, with respect, you're comparing apples to oranges. Times are different now. You can't. What hasn't changed is human behavior. Trends come and go, but trust, consistency, and proven results are what keep clients. That's not old-fashioned, it's survival. Ethan, did you validate your numbers before presenting them? Well, the industry is moving so fast, And just like that, the mask slipped. The golden boy wasn't so golden anymore. Addison, this is exceptional work. Thank you for bringing clarity. We can't afford to gamble with half-baked numbers. In less than 20 minutes, the tide turned. The executives who had clapped for Ethan now looked at him with doubt. The same people who had dismissed me days before were suddenly asking me the questions. And Ethan? He sat there, pale, silent, drowning in the silence he once commanded. When the dust finally settled, the silence in the office felt different. Not the awkward, tense silence of 2 people locked in a cold war. Not the silence of whispered gossip behind cubicle walls. This was the silence of realization, of a storm that had passed, leaving behind broken branches but also a clearer sky. After the leadership meeting, the HR director released a formal statement. Respect in the workplace is non-negotiable. Conflicts based on generational stereotypes will not be tolerated. We value both experience and fresh perspectives. Those words didn't just echo in a corporate email. They carried weight. It was HR's way of saying, Addison, you were right. And Ethan, you crossed a line. Ethan wasn't fired. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, he was reassigned to a smaller project, one he had to manage mostly on his own. Suddenly, the spotlight he craved so desperately was shining on him alone. And without a team to carry him, the cracks in his leadership started to show. Meanwhile, I was asked, no, urged, to take the lead on the global rollout of the very project he had dismissed. The one I had built from scratch. It wasn't just a victory. It was vindication. But let me tell you something. Winning doesn't always feel like fireworks and confetti. When I walked into my office the next day, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Years of being overlooked, brushed aside, underestimated. It had all led to this moment. And while it was gratifying, it also reminded me of the weight I had carried all this time. I went home that night, sat on my porch with a glass of wine and let myself cry. Not tears of sadness. Not even tears of anger. But tears of release. Because sometimes proving yourself means carrying scars. The fallout wasn't just about me or Ethan. It rippled through the entire office. The younger employees started to realize that experience wasn't just a buzzword, it was a resource. They stopped rolling their eyes when someone older spoke up in meetings. They listened. They asked questions. The older staff too began to soften. They realized the younger ones weren't enemies. They were simply hungry, ambitious, and eager to prove themselves, just as we once were. I saw colleagues who hadn't spoken more than a polite hello in months suddenly sharing lunch together. Generations that once clashed now began to collaborate. It was as if the tension had forced a mirror in front of everyone, and finally we were able to see the humanity on both sides. Standing at the crossroads of victory and reflection, I realized this wasn't just about me versus Ethan. It was about something much bigger. It was about how every workplace, every team, every generation has to fight this battle at some point. The clash between old wisdom and new energy. And the truth? Neither can survive without the other. Experience without fresh ideas becomes rigid. Fresh ideas without experience become reckless. Together, though, they create balance. They create growth. They create something unstoppable. I learned something profound. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to fight dirty to win respect. What you need is patience, resilience, and the courage to hold your ground even when the odds feel stacked against you. And when you do, when you refuse to let someone else write your story, you don't just win a project. You win back your power, your voice, your worth. So if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you're too young to know anything or too old to keep up, remember this. The very thing they dismiss you for, your age, your years, your experience, your perspective, that's the very thing that makes you valuable. Don't let anyone take that from you. When I look back at everything that happened, every email ignored, every sarcastic comment from Ethan, every meeting where my voice was pushed to the corner, I realized something important. The real battle wasn't me against him. It was me against silence, against doubt, against the fear that maybe, just maybe, they were right about me. But the moment I stood up, the moment I trusted not just my skills but my worth, everything changed. And that, right there, is the lesson I want you to carry with you. In every office, every company, every country, you'll find the same story playing out. Generations clash. Egos collide. Respect feels like it has to be earned twice, or even stolen back from those who try to deny it. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Experience is power. Not because it makes you better than someone else, but because it gives you perspective they don't have yet. Fresh energy is power too. Not because it's flashy, but because it reminds us that the world is moving forward. And the only way we win is by blending both. I didn't win this because I crushed Ethan. I won because I showed that my years of work, my mistakes, my growth, all of it had value that could not be erased. So if you're listening to my story right now and you've ever felt invisible at work, if you've ever had someone dismiss you because you're too young or too old, if you've ever walked out of a meeting with that burning feeling in your chest, wishing you had spoken up, this is your reminder. You deserve to be heard. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had a workplace clash between generations? Did someone underestimate you because of your age? Or maybe because they thought you were just a rookie or out of touch? And how did you handle it? Share your story because your voice might just be the reminder someone else needs right now. And hey, if this story hit home for you, don't just click away. Like this video, share it with a friend who needs to hear it and subscribe. Because I have more stories that dive deep into the real battles we face at work and in life. Every story has a lesson, and every lesson has the power to change the way we see ourselves. In the end, Ethan wasn't my enemy. The real enemy was the idea that age, young or old, makes us less. But I proved, and you can too, that our experiences don't make us outdated. They make us unstoppable. And that's the kind of power nobody can take away. And so, that chapter of my life came to a close. Not with fireworks, not with a dramatic exit, but with something much quieter and much more powerful. Respect. Because when the final emails were sent, when the last presentations were finished, what lingered wasn't the sting of conflict, it was the echo of change. The office didn't go back to normal. No, it grew. It evolved. We learned to see each other not through the lens of stereotypes, but through the reality of what we each bring to the table. Ethan? He stumbled, yes. But sometimes stumbling is what forces someone to grow. Over time I saw him change. He became less arrogant, more measured. Maybe because he had no choice but to face his flaws head-on. Or maybe because he finally understood that leadership isn't about spotlight, it's about listening. And me? I didn't walk away a hero. I walked away human. Exhausted but stronger. Bruised but wiser. And most of all, unafraid to claim my place, my seat at the table. Here's the truth I carried with me. Seedling, every generation has something to teach. The younger generation carries the fire, the daring energy to push against the rules, to question, to innovate. The older generation carries the roots, the wisdom of experience, the scars of mistakes, the lessons learned from time. When those clash, it feels explosive. But when they meet in balance, it becomes unstoppable. That's the core of every workplace, every family, every community. It's not about choosing sides, it's about building bridges. So if you take only one thing from my story, let it be this. Don't let anyone reduce you to a number. Not your age. Not your years of experience. Not your position on the corporate ladder. You are more than that. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And the world needs what only you can give. But now I want to hear from you. Because this isn't just my story. It's ours. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever been underestimated because of your age? Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever faced a generation clash at work? Or even in your family? Backhand index pointing right, and how did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. I promise you'll be surprised how many people will read it and say, that happened to me too. Because when we share our experiences, we don't just heal ourselves. We remind others they're not alone. If this story spoke to you, hit like, click subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to be reminded that their voice matters. This channel isn't just about stories. It's about lessons. It's about us, building a space where every generation can listen, learn, and grow together. In the end, the greatest power isn't in being the youngest or the oldest in the room. It's in realizing that together we are stronger. And that's the kind of story worth telling.